At its peak, this city was the largest urban center north of Mexico, larger than medieval London. A metropolis of 20,000 people with over 120 earthen mounds rising from the Mississippi floodplain. Its name is Cahokia. Pause. For centuries, we couldn't understand how it got there. Early historians, faced with its sheer scale, insisted it couldn't have been built by the ancestors of today's Native Americans. They invented lost races, mythical wanderers, anything to explain it away. Pause. But the bones don't lie. And now, through the magic of ancient DNA, they are speaking. And what they are revealing is not a story of a single isolated people, but something far more interesting. A story of migrants, of power, of sacrifice, and of a civilization that was truly a melting pot of the ancient world. Pause. If the bones could speak, what secrets would they tell about who the ancient builders truly were? To understand the people, you first have to understand the place they built. Rising from the Illinois floodplain, Monks Mound dominates the landscape. At 100 feet tall, covering over 14 acres, it remains the largest prehistoric earthwork in the Americas. The sheer volume of soil moved, an estimated 22 million cubic feet, required thousands of workers, each carrying baskets of earth by hand. This wasn't a random pile of dirt. Its base is longer than the Great Pyramid of Giza. Its summit once held a massive structure, likely the home of Cahokia's most powerful leader. But the city was more than just one mound. Surrounding this central pyramid, planners laid out an 80-acre grand plaza. This open space, larger than 60 football fields, was ringed by dozens of smaller mounds. Some were platforms for elite buildings, others were burial sites. And at the city's western edge, a circle of massive cedar posts, known as woodhenge, served as a solar calendar. These posts, some over 20 feet tall, marked the solstices and equinoxes, guiding planting, harvest, and ritual. Pause. This was a society with astronomers, engineers, and a central government powerful enough to mobilize a massive workforce for generations. The construction of Monks Mound alone likely spanned a century, each new stage reflecting the ambition of a new ruler. The question that haunted archaeologists for decades was simple. Where did all these people come from? Were they all local? Or did this city, like so many other great cities throughout history, act as a beacon for newcomers? For generations, the origins of Cahokia were not just a mystery, but a myth. In the 19th century, American settlers and scholars looked at these monumental earthworks and struggled to accept that the indigenous peoples they were actively displacing could have built them. So they invented stories. One popular legend claimed that a group of Welsh explorers, led by Prince Madoc in the 11th century, crossed the Atlantic and built the mounds. Another insisted on a vanished mound builder race, perhaps connected to the lost tribes of Israel, that was later wiped out by the savage ancestors of today's Native Americans. Pause. These weren't just innocent guesses, they were political tools. By denying Native Americans their history, they justified taking their land. But as the 20th century progressed, archaeology began to chip away at these lies. In the 1960s, archaeologist Melvin Fowler brought scientific rigor to Cahokia. His team found something the mythmakers ignored: garbage, household debris, broken pots, animal bones, corn cobs scattered throughout the mound fill. These were the everyday items left behind by the workers and residents. It was a living city, built by living people, not a lost world. Radiocarbon dating confirmed it. Cahokia's peak was between 1050 and 1200 CE, centuries before any supposed Welsh arrival. The builders were unmistakably indigenous to the Mississippi Valley.
But while archaeology could tell us who didn't build it, it couldn't tell us exactly who did. For that, we needed a new kind of evidence. We needed to look at the bones themselves. Just southeast of Monks Mound lies a low ridge called Mound 72. It looks unremarkable, but beneath its surface, archaeologists uncovered a burial ground like nowhere else in North America. More than 270 individuals were interred here, and their arrangement tells a story of deep social division. Pause. The most lavish grave is known as the Birdman burial. He was a man in his 40s, laid to rest on a bed of over 20,000 marine shell beads, meticulously arranged in the shape of a falcon with outstretched wings. Beneath him lay a cape of shells. At his side, dozens of finely crafted arrowheads. He was clearly a man of immense power, a warrior priest king. And his bones tell us he was an outsider. Chemical traces in his teeth, a technique called Strontium isotope analysis, show he spent his childhood far from Cahokia, likely in the southeast. He was a migrant who rose to rule the city. Long pause. Now look nearby. In a single pit, the remains of 53 young women, most between 18 and 23 years old, were found arranged in neat rows. There is little sign of violence, but the uniformity of their ages and the timing of their deaths point to a single, horrifying event: mass ritual sacrifice. Radiocarbon dating places this event at the same time as the Birdman's burial, around 1150 CE. These women, unlike the Birdman, grew up locally. They were not buried with wealth. They were retainers, sacrificed to accompany a powerful leader into the afterlife. Pause. In the shadow of the greatest mound, we see the stark reality of Cahokia, a society of hierarchy, where power was concentrated in the hands of foreign-born elites and where ritual could demand the ultimate price from its own people. The bones of Mound 72 were the first hints of a diverse, stratified, and sometimes brutal society. But the biggest secret was still locked inside them. Inside a sterile laboratory, Dr. Jane Sorensen and her team lean over trays lined with ancient teeth and bone samples. This is not an archaeology dig. This is a genetic one. Their tools, pipettes, gloves, and ultra-clean extraction chambers are designed for one purpose: to extract faint traces of human DNA from people who lived 1,000 years ago without contaminating them with our own. They target mitochondrial DNA, which is passed down through the maternal line and survives longest in ancient remains. After months of painstaking work, the sequences are complete. When compared to regional databases, the results defied every old assumption. It wasn't a single local population. It was a city teeming with newcomers. Pause for effect. One major study of strontium isotopes from 87 teeth told the same story. The chemical signature in tooth enamel, which is fixed in childhood like a geologic fingerprint, showed that nearly 90% of the individuals tested grew up somewhere else. Some came from the copper-rich lands of the Great Lakes near modern-day Michigan. Others carried the signature of the shell-rich soils of the Gulf Coast from Florida or Louisiana. The Birdman, the elite leader, was just one of many. This was a city of migrants, and the genetic code confirmed it. Haplogroup mapping, which traces maternal ancestry, uncovered a patchwork of lineages rarely found in one place. You had women with roots in the northern plains buried next to men whose ancestors came from the southeast. The city was a true melting pot. Pause. Cahokia was not the product of slow local expansion. It was a boom town, a magnet. People were drawn by opportunity, by trade, by religious fervor, or perhaps by force. They arrived with their own languages, their own pottery styles, their own gods, and they mixed together to create something new. The archaeological record had already hinted at this: copper from the Great Lakes, shells from the Gulf Coast, pottery from distant river valleys. Now we know why. The objects didn't just travel, the people traveled with them. Cahokia was not an isolated settlement. It was a continental crossroads, a Bronze Age New York City, forged by the movement of people and ideas across the ancient Midwest. But the very thing that made Cahokia strong, its diversity and rapid growth, may have also made it vulnerable. By the late 1100s, cracks began to appear. Tree ring records point to a mega-drought gripping the region between 1276 and 1299. It was the worst in centuries. The corn withered in the fields. The unpredictable Mississippi flooded one year and dried up the next.